I have found my soul's delight in you, Lord, in you, Lord. I have found my soul's delight in your eyes, in your eyes. Your word is water to my soul. Your word is life to me. Your word is water to my soul. Your word is life to me. So plant me like a tree by the streams of living water. Plant me like a tree by the streams, by the stream. Plant me like a tree by the streams of living water. Plant me like a tree by the streams, by the stream. Your word is water to my soul. Your word is life to me. Your word is water to my soul. Your word is life to me. So plant me like a tree by the streams of living water. Plant me like a tree by the streams, by the streams. Plant me like a tree by the streams of living water. Plant me like a tree by the streams, by the streams. Day and night I will meditate on your word. Day and night I will meditate on your word. Day and night I will meditate on your word. Day and night I will meditate on your word. So plant me like a tree by the streams of living water. Plant me like a tree by the streams, by the streams. Day and night I will meditate on your word. Day and night I will meditate on your word. Day and night I will meditate on your word. Day and night I will meditate on your word.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Midweek Live. Pastor Sam here, and excited to be back joining you this week. We hope you enjoyed that song. That song really explains why we're here tonight. God's word is life to us, and we hope as we dig into this, we find that to be true. And hello to all our friends who are joining us on Facebook, on YouTube, or on the Cornerstone site. We're so glad you're here tonight with us. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce my co-host tonight, Chris, Chicago-style Sotelo. Chris, why don't you go ahead and say hello to everyone and tell people about your nickname?
That's how it starts out here because we're from Chicago. You know, gotta start out with the wah wah horn. Pastor Sam, it's so great to be back. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And that song was really great. I put it in the Facebook comments, but shout out to the woodwind family. Anyone that ever played clarinet in band. I played clarinet in band. So that's a little bit about me. I'm also one of the youth leaders here. I don't just play clarinet in junior high. I'm actually one of the youth leaders at Cornerstone. And it's just great to be back with you, Pastor Sam. It's been a little bit, and I'm really excited to get into what we've got going on tonight. Midwest boys, we're back at it. Let's do this. So this week, we're going to continue to study the book of Psalms, if you've been following along. And our message tonight comes from John Talbert, who works with Transforming the Bay with Christ as a city uniter, and he serves as the chaplain to the Oakland A's, and if I'm correct, also the Giants as well.
Yeah, so awesome, brother. Great sense of humor, and has a great way of just kind of opening God's word. And so in this first clip, John's going to be setting the stage for exploring the theme for tonight, which is the DNA of compassion from Psalm 145. So let's check that out.
All right, follow along right there in your bulletin. The notes, I'm just going to read through the first 16 verses here. I exalt you, my God, the King, and praise your name forever and ever. I will praise you every day. I will honor your name forever and ever. Yahweh is great and highly praised. His greatness is unsearchable. One generation will declare your works to the next and will proclaim your mighty acts. I will speak of your splendor and your glorious majesty, your wonderful works. They will proclaim the power of your awe-inspiring acts, and I will declare your greatness. They will give a testimony of your great goodness and will joyfully sing of your righteousness. The Lord is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, great in faithful love. The Lord is good to everyone, and his compassion rests on all that he has made. All you have made will thank you, Lord, and the godly will praise you. They will speak of the glory of your kingdom and will declare your might, informing all people of your mighty acts and of the glorious splendor of your kingdom. Your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. Your rule is for all generations. The Lord is faithful in all his words and gracious in all his actions. The Lord helps all who fall. He raises up all who are oppressed. All eyes look to you, and you give them their food at the proper time. You open your hand and you satisfy every desire, a desire of every living thing. There's more in that passage, but it goes on and on, where this tidal wave after tidal wave of this expression. And what I love about this passage is really the crown jewel of David's praise to God, where he celebrates this overwhelming aspect of his goodness, of his compassion, of his provision, of the fact that he sustains not just you, he sustains all things. The Lord is good to everyone. He has compassion on all that he has made. And when we think of his goodness on us, we put it in this kind of perspective. Goodness spans from God redeeming our lives, or healing a sickness, or journeying with us through a broken season, all the way to the very simple. Sunshine, rain, waking up, your next breath, finding a parking spot in San Francisco. It's the macro and the micro, the very personal acts of goodness towards you, or the general acts of goodness towards everyone, that this psalm puts in perspective. God's goodness towards you and his goodness towards all. His compassion is great. And this is what David just spews this out in a tidal wave of gratitude. He says, I will speak, verse 5, I will speak of your splendor and your glorious majesty, your wonderful works. He's speaking of his own life as well as the history of God in journeying through mankind, proclaiming the power of your awe-inspiring acts. I will declare your greatness. I will give testimony of your great goodness. I will joyfully sing of your righteousness. It's just overwhelming. When you put this in perspective, you begin to see something greater than yourself. And thus, praise for you, when you begin to see it, praise and honor and exaltation begins to make sense. I get it. My next breath, that's kind of important. I get it. Or when you've experienced compassion on a personal level, you're compelled to speak of it and express it. This is what happened to me. And this is what somebody did for me. And you speak of those things. It's compassion, and this is what I love about this, and we call it the DNA of compassion. Compassion, justice, and goodness is what brought me back to the roots of my faith and grounded me in the calling of God. This is a super important passage for me in my journey. Because my faith journey truly evolves as God's compassion became clear in my own life. And for me, I was raised in a Christian home. My father's a Baptist minister down in Southern California. And so I was in a home where we went to church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. Anybody have to do that? Anybody have to go to church all the time? Like, where are you going? Church again? Yes. And your parents are like the last ones to leave. Please, can we go? Anybody? Yes. You guys should be in my therapy group together. You can cry and stuff. So I grew up in this home where it was just, this is our Christian home. And my parents are good people. I love them dearly. And I understand what they were trying to do and instill our Christian walk. But we had, for my brother and my sister, and I was the youngest of three, we had what we call a set of rules upon which we lived our lives because we're Christian. And my mom called them the 9 nasties. These are the things that we don't do because we're Christian. The 9 nasties. And they were, we don't drink, we don't smoke, we don't chew. Never understood that one as a kid. So we don't chew. My brother's like, I don't know, just swallow. It doesn't make sense. Why are those kids, they're gagging all the time. We don't drink, we don't smoke and chew. We don't play cards. We don't go dancing. We don't take drugs. That was one of the ones that actually made sense. That seems bad. We don't go cruising. There was a whole bunch of them. Hang out with girls that do those things, all that stuff. 9 nasties. And we weren't allowed to go to the movies. It was one of them too. And I remember with my friends growing up, and my friends would say to me, hey, at the school, we were at a school, and they said, hey, we're having a dance. You want to go to the dance? And I'd be like, no, because I'm a Christian. And I remember arguing with my father. Dad, can we, there's a dance. Can we go to the dance? My dad's like, in a Baptist tone, whatever that means to you. Son, dancing stimulates the lust of the flesh. And I'm like, we know. That's why we like it, right? So I wasn't allowed to go to dances. Arguing with my father about going to the movies. We were like, can we go to the movies? My dad's like, no. And the very first movie I saw, I snuck out when I was 17. I wasn't allowed to go to movies until I was 18. I snuck out at 17. I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark. Can you imagine that being your first movie? Like that big old ball coming down. You're like, I've been missing everything. Wow. I was so mad at my parents at the theater. I'm like, man, they made me miss everything. And I remember talking to my dad and saying, Dad, can't we go to the movies? And my dad would say, in his very Baptist tone, son, what if you're in the theater and Jesus returns? What happens then? And I'm like, we won't get to see the rest of the movie. So we weren't allowed to, all these things, all this stuff that we weren't allowed to do as kids. And that was really like this. These are the things that, for me, defined what it meant to be a Christian. And I remember struggling with that for the longest time. And there was this moment in time, I actually remember it specifically. We had a family dog. Her name was Sugar. She was walking through the family room, and she went and laid down. And I looked at her, and and I had this epiphany in my mind. Sugar is a Christian. She has to be. Because she doesn't drink, she doesn't smoke, she doesn't play cards. And there are dogs that do, because I've seen this picture right here. Like, that is just pure sin and carnality right there. Like, my dog would never hang out with those dogs. My dog is clearly a Christian. Clearly. And it was that kind of ridiculousness for me that made me go, is that what Christianity is all about? If it really is, I don't want anything to do with it. And I took a season in my life and just really walked away from what does it mean to be a Christian?
So, Chris, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely, my friend.
So you have a very sweet dog.
I
named
do.
Pepper,
She's actually
right?
sitting right by me right here. Yeah, taking a nap.
Okay. So you can ask her if you want. But do you think Pepper's a Christian?
Absolutely. I absolutely do think Pepper's a Christian. By their fruit you shall know. And if we were going by the 9 nasties here, she does a good job staying away from them, for sure. Right?
Awesome. She's a good girl.
She's good.
All right, but as John is digging into this DNA of compassion and thinking about like love and justice and all these things that show up at the core of being a Christian, it does raise that question: that what does it mean to be a Christian? Like early on in your faith, like how did you see what it meant to be a Christian?
Well, that's actually a really good question. I think that it begs kind of taking a look at history a little bit. And so for my personal history, Roman Catholicism is the dominant religion of the Philippines. And when my parents immigrated to the States in the 70s, they continued to practice Catholicism. And so I grew up in a very devout Roman Catholic home. It was so devout that we would be in church every Sunday. We would be praying the rosary every night. And by we, I mean my mom would be praying the rosary every night, and she would ask us to do it. And she would, be faithful to do it, and I would pretend to be very sleepy, and I would pretend to be asleep, so I would get out of praying this rosary. And that's a tough thing to admit, because I've seen in the Facebook chats that my parents are currently watching this right now. Sorry, Mom, if you didn't know. Hey, there it is. But to me, being a Christian and being a good Catholic was basically a balancing act of doing and not doing, right? Do enough good and be sure not to do too much bad. And that way the cosmic scales would be tipped in my favor, and by my works, salvation would be secured, right? To me, God was very distant. He was to be obeyed. And I actually never knew what it meant to have a relationship with God until I got to college. So that was kind of my understanding of Christianity growing up. How about you, Pastor Sam?
Yeah, not too dissimilar from you. I was raised Catholic as well, and there's a lot of good things I got from the Catholic Church, but in practice, what I really understood, what it meant to be Christian, or at least engaged at the church I grew up in, had a lot to do with just kind of showing up and how people saw you, how things appeared on the outside, kind of keeping in. But there's this notion of wanting to keep God happy and not angry, doing things to make him angry, and honestly, I kind of saw him like Santa, where he had this sort of cumulative naughty and nice list. And as long as I kept things more to the nice side and then learned about confession, kind of being able to reset that every week. And then so Sunday was sort of an opportunity to reset that and then go about sort of sinning and living my life however I wanted to the rest of the week, kind of thing. And so it was just sort of coming back on Sunday, making things right, and then going about my life however I wanted to, and just trying to keep that favor in the right direction. But it was very much me focused, kind of how do I keep me good? That makes sense.
Yeah, and for the Catholics who are with us on this chat, you know very well this long list of Our Fathers and Hail Marys and Glory Bees. Got to get your Glory Bees in to get
All
right
Glory Bees.
before I got it. That's right. I totally feel that. And as we continue on with the message that John is giving. In the next clip, he's going to share a little bit more about what it means to be a Christian and to follow Jesus' example, and what it also means to develop compassion towards others. So let's go ahead and take a look at this clip.
In John chapter 13, right at the very beginning, Jesus is washing the disciples' feet because somebody didn't show up for work that day. And so he just takes on the role of the servant, the worst possible job. And then later on, as he's washing the disciples' feet, he says this. He says, "A new command I give to you, to love one another, as I have loved you," as I've just demonstrated to you. A new command, as I have loved you, to love one another. "By this, everyone will know that you're my disciple, if you love one another. By the character, the caliber, the quality of love is what defined me. Compassion, service. I had reckoned with Jesus as my Savior, but I wanted to walk in a life that was like Christ. I began to go back and look through the scriptures, and I saw Jesus in a completely different light. He's serving the poor. He's serving the marginalized. He's serving the left out. He's leaning into the shadows and the cracks of society, and it became an adventure. And I'm like, I want to live an adventurous life. I don't want to live by a set of rules. I want to be empowered by a way to live. And that changed everything for me. And that's why this passage is so important. It becomes the center point for that passage. Look at verse 8 and 9. Because everything else builds around it. The Lord is gracious and compassionate. He's slow to anger. He's great in faithful love. He's good to everyone. His compassion rests on all that He has made. Everything. When you walk out the door, His compassion rests on all that He has made. Did you know that? When I read this passage, here's what stands out to me. There's just 4 things that just stand out to me, and I'm just going to go through them real quick for you. First one, there's this wow factor that's connected to compassion. A wow factor. Verse 1 and 2, it says, I exalt you. I praise your name forever. I honor and I praise your name. Again and again, and even as the songs we were singing, your name, your name. What does name mean? Anytime name is mentioned, it's talking about character. The character of God. In Song of Solomon, when the husband and the wife are having this conversation, she says, your name is like ointment poured forth. Your character is so appealing to me. The character. Let me give you an example. When I say the name Steph Curry, what comes to mind? There's things that come to mind. 3 points. Ball handling. Making his teammates look good. It's part of his, you say his name and it's associated with stuff that reflects who he is as a person on the court. So to say I honor and praise your name is to say your character, God, because God is consistently compassionate and loving. And so I honor your character.
Mm-hmm. If you've been journeying with us to this point and you've ever seen Sam and I interact, and if you've been paying attention, you'll know that I was born and raised in Chicago. And as a Chicagoan, I feel like I need to lead into this next segment here and set the record straight, lest all my Chicago heads call me out. But the greatest player of all time is not Steph Curry. It is Michael Jordan, the GOAT. I have to say it. But as they say, game, recognize game. This is for you, Pastor Lewis, if you're watching. I will concede. Greatness is also synonymous with the name of Steph Curry. He's supremely talented, but he ain't the GOAT. I just got to get that in there. Also for you, Pastor On, if you're watching. But that said, the idea of someone's name representing their character is truly a powerful thing. And there's also, though, this idea that the name, I've heard this, I think it was from Miracle, that movie about the U.S. hockey team. Coach Herb is railing on his players during practice, and he says this thing, I'm going to misquote, but the idea was the name on the front of their jersey, it said Team USA. The name on the front of their jersey is way more important than the name on the back of the jersey, right? And as Christians, we represent Team Jesus, right? Jesus is compassionate. He is loving. And how often do we live in a way that someone can look at our actions and look at us and say, man, that person clearly follows Jesus. That person is Team Jesus. The way I think about it is when I think about the cross, right? I think about the beams of the cross. There's the vertical beam and there's this horizontal beam, right? And the vertical beam reflects our right standing with God through Jesus. Jesus, through his death on the cross, was able to give us a right standing with God, and we could enter into relationship with God. But also there's this horizontal beam, right? There's this idea that the horizontal beam shows us then how to live with our brother and our sister here on earth, how we then exercise that vertical compassion that's come down across the breadth of life to our brother and sister. I just think that that's really remarkable.
Yeah, that's really powerful, and that idea of the cross representing that. If somebody has the vertical component without the horizontal, they can feel very removed or unrelatable to people. But when the horizontal is present, that's where it shows up, and it becomes real and attractive as well. And as John noted, the love and compassion, this other focus, the horizontal beam, is meant to be the defining quality of Christians. From John 13, 34, and 35. And one of the awesome things about the season in sort of this idea of cultivating compassion is people are wanting to hear one another's stories. And that's really where we get to know people. We get to sort of see what they've been through or what they're experiencing. Even when catching up with people who we haven't talked to for the last, however many years, this season seems to be prompting people to want to reach out and connect. I know I touch base with some college friends I haven't talked to pretty much since I graduated college back in 2002. Wow. So literally 18 years have gone by, and we were trying to catch up on that stuff. So, and just hearing each other's stories and what's happened and that kind of thing. So whether it's COVID-19 that has us doing that, or even the pursuit of racial justice and those kind of things, we're seeking to hear people's stories. And Alex Costanzo this past Sunday even talked about how 1 Peter 3:15 charges us as Christ followers to always be ready to give a reason for the hope that we have in Christ. And so looking at how that compassion that we've experienced in God has affected who we are, and again, if that horizontal beam is there, that other focus, then people want to see why our story is the way it is, and that kind of thing too. And and hopefully the pain, the suffering, the things we've gone through, and even the compassion and understanding that people see will ultimately point to Christ and have that vertical component showing up. So one of the things I wanted to just run by you, Chris, is what does compassion look like for you this season?
I think in this season it's interesting. Compassion has taken on a form of listening, actually, a lot, and just kind of exercising empathy by coming alongside people and just really being quick to listen and hear their stories and kind of lift people up. And not so much fall into a trap of being ready to give some type of like pithy answer or, like a wise saying, but really just being with people and listening to them and having them feel seen and heard. I think there's a lot of power in being both seen and heard. So that's kind of what it looks like in this season for me. And I know that's been a powerful tool when people have sidled up next to me when I've gone through rough times as well, to lend a very empathetic and listening ear. As we continue on with Psalms, we're kind of going to see like how do we extend this compassion even further? How do we invite others into this process of listening and sharing stories in a way that actually points to God and shares the greater story? So let's go ahead and take a look at this next clip.
Psalm 145 isn't just a celebration of what God has done in the past, but it's a blueprint for how God's people are to live in the present, and through compassion to actively engage in a community with the love of Christ inside of us and call people to the same journey that we're on. Invite them to this invitation of what Jesus has done for you, and then do that towards others. The DNA of compassion comes from God himself and is given to his followers. So here's, in that kingdom aspect, here's 4 things that I want to give you. 4 universal truths that I've observed about compassion that I believe God uses to call us to advance his kingdom. 4 things. First is, compassion becomes contagious. Compassion is contagious. It's viral. People want to be part of it. At our church, I had some guys come to me and say, hey, can we do a compassion project for some people, like widows and single moms? We want to do an oil change for them. Can we do an oil change for the single moms and widows? I'm like, sure, that'd be great. And so they worked out a day at our church down in San Jose, and we worked it out for them to come. And just a week before, we were kind of working out some of the details. Right next to our church is a car wash, and we were seeing if we can use their parking lot and some different things. We said, yeah. And the manager of the car wash, he said, well, why don't we just wash the cars for free? Can we do that? He didn't go to my church. He just wanted to be involved. Can we wash the cars? I'm like, sure. It's awesome. Unbeknownst to me, he goes and talks to the manager at a Wheelworks, which is right next to the car wash, where they have the bays where they lift the cars up and they do tune-up and all that stuff. And they worked it out for all the bays to be open and for light tune-ups and different things. And all their mechanics were going to volunteer their time. And they asked me, can we do that? Can we do light tune-ups? Sure. Right across the way, right into our driveway, and on the other side, there's an O'Reilly Auto Parts. And they go talk to the auto parts guy because they all know each other. Talk to the auto parts guy, and they say, hey, can we get all this stuff donated? Because this is what it's for. You should join us. This is pretty awesome. I'm not even there. Like, hey, can we join this? They asked me, can we get the parts done? What do you think I said? Sure. Across the street is a AAA. I'm not making this up. There's a AAA. They talk to the AAA person. The AAA person's like, they're going to waive all the fees because they want to join the story. They asked me, can we waive all the fees? I'm like, sure. Back across the street is a C's Candy, where apparently these guys frequent quite often. And they talk to the manager and say, well, why don't we give them chocolates? What do you think I said? I said, I got to check it, make sure it's safe. So bring me a couple samples and I'll let you know. Sure. Right behind the C's Candy is a nail salon. I don't know what you ladies doing there, but you seem to like it. Pedicures, manicures, all that stuff, whatever, but you like it. And they're like, absolutely. And so while their cars are getting done, they're getting their nails done, there were so many things that happened. It was like Christmas for these ladies. All my guys wanted to do was change the stinking oil. But compassion became contagious. People want to join the story of God. And it becomes this redemptive mechanism to invite people into the journey. Why do I love this so much? Well, here's why we do it. Compassion is contagious. And it calls out to that compassion gene that's embedded in each one of us. It becomes viral. Second, compassion's always off balance. It's always off balance. I love how in the different times of Jesus' day, compassion always is like, whoa, it's a little bit like the feeding of 5,000. Here's 5,000 people, 2 fish, 5 loaves. There's not very many fish sandwiches. And it's better that the needs are greater than the resources because it gives this miraculous space for God to show up. See, if they had just 5,000 people and 5,000 sandwiches, there's no miracle. There's just distribution. And so when you don't have enough resources, that's that beautiful space for God to do something heroic in you and through you. It's always off balance. Third, compassion. Compassion disrupts status quo. Compassion disrupts status quo. This one's super important to me. There's always something about compassion where it's most often, my own status quo. When something disrupts my rights, my preferences, my way, my agenda, that's when compassion has its most impact. I know you guys have Costco's out here because we talked about it in the last service, Costco, and I love going to Costco because it's the only place where you can get 11 gallons of milk and a kayak, right? So, and in my family, family 6, we get all our stuff, and I'm in a Costco line with my cart and my flat, and I'm getting up there, and I'm like, why are all the other lines going? And there's a girl up there, and it's her first day. And I'm like, I got things to go. This is not going to work for me. But something inside of me said, it's not my rights, it's not my agenda, it's God's agenda. And so I just say, hey, how's it going? She goes, it's my first day. And I'm like, we know. And I looked at my wife and I said, every time we come to Costco now, we get in Natalie's line. She's like, you realize she's slow? I said, yes. It gives us a great opportunity to get to know her. So for the next 17 years, every time we went to Costco, we got in Natalie's line. Guess what? She's slow. But we got to know her. And every time we get to know her, something else happens in her life. And she knows I'm a pastor and all these things. One time we got in line, she goes like this. She got engaged. We got up there, we were so excited. And she asked me if I'd do the wedding. I'm like, of course, I'm just honored. I mean, not right here, but yeah, this is great. And then later, she was going to get married a year out. So we would just see her different times. And one time she's really down-faced. I'm like, why are you so sad? She said, well, I was talking to my mother-in-law to-be, and she didn't want you to do the wedding. I'm like, why? She goes, well, I told her a pastor at Costco was going to do the wedding. I'm like, I don't work here. Like, Kirkland Seminary, I have my own deal, right? So I eventually did the wedding. She invited her family to church. 20 people came to our church service. And the story's still being told. But compassion, when it disrupts the status quo, it disrupts your agenda, your preference. You're always too busy to do it. That's the perfect time. God's going to do something in you and through you. To take the time to the next person you meet, the next person in line, the next teller or barista, to get to know their name. Compassion doesn't happen on your timeline. Last, compassion brings Jesus to the center. It brings Jesus to the center. Jesus, in major point of his teaching, connected it to compassion when he said, I was hungry, you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me nothing to drink. And people are like, when did that happen? Paraphrase. And he answers in a way that centers Jesus at the heart of compassion when he says, whatever you did to the least of these, you've done it unto me.
Hey, Pastor Sam, I feel like I need to make a confession right now. I confess that I've never stepped foot into a Costco ever in my life.
Wow. So I do believe they sell baptismals there. So we could take you there. We could baptize you into Costco, probably in gallons of milk if necessary. And we could rectify that wrong.
I mean, it's like, it's not that I don't want to go. It's just I don't think I've ever had the need to buy in bulk ever. In the Midwest, is Sam's Club? Is that the same thing?
I don't like to brag about it, but yeah, it's kind of
okay. I'd join Sam's Club over Costco any day if it makes you feel any better. No, I thought that section was really great. I think I love those 4 universal truths that John raised about compassion. He said that it's contagious, it's off balance, it disrupts the status quo, and it brings Jesus to the center. What do you think about compassion within that framework, and how have you seen it kind of play out in this season?
Yeah, I mean, those are definitely truths, and one of the things that we saw as COVID kind of was kicking up, and it became clear that things like surgical masks, or not the surgical, like just the general masks that nurses and doctors wear were of short supply because people were buying them for their own use, people were buying them to price gouge, all that stuff, and so hospitals were running short, and they were having to figure out ways to get around that, and we had some hospital staff or people who were on staff at a hospital. Who we knew were kind of working the front lines, and somebody reached out and said like, hey, I'd really like to maybe make some masks, and we're like, that sounds awesome, and then somebody else reached out and said, hey, like, I know a lot of people are making masks. Do you know if anyone's making like the caps, like and then there's a way to make them where you can hook the masks on there so it doesn't like stretch your ears all day long, and they're like, can we make those? And I have a whole crew of people that like to help make them too. Like, great. and then as it kind of formalized and conceptualized. We have a couple in our community who have a coffee roasting company, and they're like, can we make coffee for these guys? And there's another family that have a bakery/restaurant, and they're like, can we make breakfast for these guys? And so all of a sudden, what was meant to be sort of a nice gesture to help meet a need that was very tangible for people who were on the front lines, risking their own health. Sometimes they're amidst, there's still a lot not known at the time, whether it was what the death toll would be, or how serious it was, and all those things. And had to be there because of their work. And now there's this huge, generous thing to look out for their care, but also just to bless them on top of that. And it just ended up being this powerful, witness. And when the people who were on staff there, who also attended Cornerstone, got to say, that's my church. It became this thing that put Jesus at the center, that answered the why question, and they just felt loved on and appreciated. And it was a really cool thing that just kind of saw that contagiousness of compassion just building. In the best possible way. And so that was pretty cool. That's one example that comes to mind right away. And it just exemplifies just that the power of when people see something good happening and want to be part of it. Mm-hmm. And with that, people want to be part of a community that has compassion and love at its core. And part of, as we share our stories, and again, the season is a time that's ripe for that. We can invite people into a place, like Cornerstone, that has that at its core, where people are getting out and serving at the food bank, or going to help at the Salvation Army, and places that are again going out to serve people who have even more need because of everything that's going on. So it ends up being this cool place where we can practice our compassion and our faith. Yeah,
that's great. That's such a great example of what it means to horizontally live out our faith and love on the brothers and sisters in our lives. Speaking of extending compassion and loving on the brothers and sisters in our lives, we're going to welcome on a brother over here who's gonna bless us with some music. Phil, are you with us? There he is.
With you to the end. I'm with you.
Phil.
And this is the
with
end.
Us to the end.
I
Phil,
love
thank you
what
for
John
joining us,
Talbot was.
man.
I love what John Talbot was talking about there at the very end. He mentioned that part from I believe it's Matthew 25, where that which you've done to the least of these, you've done unto me, and that definitely resonates with that horizontal beam that you were talking about of the cross and how we treat others, and there's no greater example than the parable of the Good Samaritan. It wasn't the ones who passed by that had a great name, whose character would normally be associated with a good character with those names, but it was the Samaritan that they had no relationship with that stopped to help the person in need. And so this song relates to that exactly.
Very cool.
Want to sing it with
Excellent.
me?
We'll leave the singing to you, my man. I think we're better off that way.
That's my gift to everyone else.
Yeah, it's true.
You live among the least of these, the weary and the weak. And it would be a tragedy for me to turn away. All my needs you have supplied. When I was dead, you gave me life. How could I not give it away so freely? And I'll follow you into the homes of the broken, follow you into the world. I'll meet the needs of the poor and the needy, God. Follow you into the world. Use my hands, use my feet to let your kingdom come to the corners of the earth until your work is done. 'Cause faith without works is dead, and on the cross your blood was shed. How could I not give it away so freely? And I'll follow you into the homes of the broken, follow you into the world. I'll meet the needs of the poor and the needy, God. Follow you into the world. Give all myself. I'll give all myself. I'll give all myself to you. I'll give all myself. I'll give all myself. I'll give all myself to you. I'll follow you into the homes of the broken, follow you into the world. I'll meet the needs of the poor and the needy, God. Follow you into the world. I'll follow you into the homes of the broken. Follow you into the world. I'll meet the needs of the poor and the needy, God. Follow you into the world.
Thank you,
That's
Phil.
awesome.
What a great song, man. It's like the perfect song. truly the perfect song to choose. I really love this idea of understanding that, it's through following Jesus, and, as we follow Jesus, we receive the empowerment to then reach out to the least of these and give to the needy, and really give of ourselves, because Jesus was that example. Thank you for blessing us today, Phil. I really appreciate that, man.
Thank you.
All right, all right. So, Sam, what else do we have coming up in the week to come, in the days to come?
Yeah, so tomorrow, so Thursday mornings every other week, Odalis is doing this thing called Faith Moments, and basically at 8:30 in the morning, you can tune in. If you're having to go to work, you can drive in to work and have it maybe on your phone or something like that, listening to it, or just pull it up on your computer, or however you'd want to watch it. But it's about a kind of a 10 to 15 minute thing where Odalis just shares a little bit about ways we can engage our faith and kind of just continue to grow closer to God and maybe live a little bit more like Jesus as we follow him. And then Friday night, we actually have Instagram Worship Live coming again this week. And so that's at 6 p.m. So tune into that and you can worship with our community.
Amazing. And then let's not forget about Sunday service. On Sunday morning, you can join us on our website. You can join us on Facebook or the YouTubes at 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. And then after that, it starts playing on demand after 1 p.m. So for those tuning in across the world right now, that is Central Time. So be sure to mark your calendars. But yeah, hey, thanks. It was great being back with you today, Pastor Sam.
Likewise,
and
brother.
here's to a great weekend full of God's grace and mercy.
To you too, and to everyone else tuning in, have a great week. We'll see you online. See, brother, do this again.
Oh no! I'm rusty.
It's like a dance move.
I'm rusty.
All right, take care, y'all. All right, bye.